This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Bare Beans Coffee. Bare Beans Coffee was built by passionate hunters like you and I, and their mission is to give back to wildlife, specifically bear conservation. Bare Beans Coffee offers both ground and whole bean options, and their flavors include dark roast, hibernation roast, and spring awakening. When drinking Bare Beans Coffee, you can be confident that you are getting a high-quality cup of joe and supporting bear conservation across North America. 10% of all profits from Bare Beans are donated to carefully selected partners such as the Western Bear Foundation. Visit barebeans.com to buy coffee and support bear conservation today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hunt the Wild podcast. I'm your host Adam Bowlds, and today I'm joined with Evan Landry. How you doing, Evan?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So today on the show, we're going to be talking about hunting in Massachusetts, mainly deer hunting in Massachusetts. And I don't know a whole lot about it, so I'm hoping Evan can give us some insight to all you listeners about kind of what it's like to deer hunt in Massachusetts and kind of the style that they got going on over there. So can you introduce and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Evan, and kind of how you got started in hunting and the outdoors?
Yeah, sure. So as was, mentioned, my name's Evan Landry. I actually live right in Plymouth, so that's the far east side of Massachusetts, right on the water. And so I got into hunting almost a decade ago now. My dad got into it before me. We had a family friend that was a huge deer hunter. Going to his house, he has all these, huge rackers on his wall, had a caribou even. So my dad was good family friends with him. And so he got into it and he wanted to hunt for a year, see what it was all about, because prior to this, we had, the most outdoorsy thing we did was striper fish, and that was about it. And so he wanted to do it for a year, see how it was, see what was involved, and then get me into it. So I got a bow at 12, but had to wait until 13 to actually go hunting. And so that was just how I got my start. And since then, it had just been, I fell in love with it right away. So it had been an uphill ride since then, for sure.
So the deer hunting in Plymouth, Massachusetts, is that exactly where you hunt, or are you traveling to another city to hunt mostly?
Yeah, Plymouth is where we do a lot of our stuff primarily. We do a week-long trip there's an island right off the south coast of Cape Cod called Nantucket. We go out there for a week each year during the rut, and then occasionally I might scoot out to Western Mass to do a little bit of late season muzzleloader, maybe even some bear hunting in the early spring. But yeah, primarily it's Plymouth. It's the largest town out here, so you have kind of the most room to run around and roam.
So can you kind of describe the terrain and sort of paint the picture for everybody what Plymouth kind of looks like as far as I guess the woods goes, and kind of is it super flat, or is it mountainous? Is it real scrubby? Kind of just tell us what you guys got going on over there.
Yeah, well, the first thing is that it's real hilly, and so you'll get sections, the flattest sections are the ones that have been, obviously put up with buildings or condos are going up everywhere. But where there's woods, it's very, very hilly. You get these deep down lows, but the thing is, the terrain and the real tree type and the foliage type stays the same for about a square mile maybe. Other than that, it's whatever guess you want. So, like for instance, behind my house, I have mostly hardwoods. I have some oak trees, a couple of maples out there. But you walk down the trail a little bit, and all of a sudden you're in full-on pine forest down there. You would thought you were somewhere way the heck off, not even where you began. And so It's basically that same thing for the majority. You can be driving down, you look off to the side and you go, oh man, that looks real good, looks real nice and thick and swampy. And next thing you know, and 20 feet away, it's all grown up hardwoods and 20, 30-foot elevation change. So the woods vary a lot. So it makes it interesting going through and hunting it.
Does that make it difficult for you that it doesn't really, that the woods or the terrain doesn't stay kind of consistent?
I wouldn't say so, because especially something that they talk about a lot, especially on something like the hunting public, is they talk about all the habitat transitions.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can find yourself an area where it goes from pines to hardwoods or hardwoods to pines or scrub brush or swamp, they're using those, are, a lot of times bedding in the swamp or in the thicker pine foliage. And another thing we have a lot of here is cranberry bogs. That's what, down south they have cornfields, they have ag fields. We have a whole lot of cranberry bogs that the deer feed on. And so in some areas like Western Plymouth, you can go and they'll have the farms that the deer will come off of, in the morning, evening. And then hopefully you can sneak in the woods and they have old ones from, a couple hundred years ago that are all grown up, still sprouting cranberries, but now they have all that cover that the deer can hide in.
Huh. What is a cranberry bog? Kind of explain what that is, because you're probably not used to cornfields and soybean fields everywhere. That's just like second nature to me, but cranberries are not. So I think I've seen it on TV on like a cranberry juice commercial. Those guys are like standing in waders, saying something goofy, but how kind of deep are they, and what's kind of the point of all the water and all that stuff?
So that just kind of, sorry.
Is that just like where they're washing it? I guess that's not where they grow, right?
No, it is actually, because what it basically is they just put some new ones up actually, so I got to see it firsthand. But imagine just a golf course of just flat sand, basically just planed out flat sand. And then what they do, take just square chunks, and they'll do all these little levees and basically moats. And in that center part, there's where they'll actually grow the cranberries, because they grow on sand.
Oh.
And so that water stays basically level with that middle part for most of the year. And then once fall and winter comes, once it comes time to harvest, they'll flood the bogs, and that has all the berries rise to the surface, so that way they can clean them up and distribute them. So especially when deer season comes around, mostly they've already harvested the cranberries, but any that they've missed, any that are still growing or that they just missed completely, the deer will come out and they'll basically clean the whole cranberry bogs off.
Huh. So I guess after they flood them or whatever, do they just stay standing water, or do they drain them out?
They drain them out. Most of the time you'll see them, like actually some of the best spots to fish around here are the cranberry access ponds, where they're feeding the water into, because whatever the heck they put in cranberries to grow them, just like anything else, all that gets into the water. So that's what I assume makes the fish bigger in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it just goes right back into the pond or into the ground. But yeah, so it's a constant state of flooding and draining.
Wow, that's interesting. Around here it's like, oh yeah, deer's feeding and cut cornfields, but I never thought about like a cut cranberries. That's just it's interesting to hear somebody from another state, kind of how much different it is. So Plymouth, that's like where the Mayflower landed, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I have to ask you, is there public land around there? Can you do you guys hunt in tree stands there at all?
Yeah, that's actually what I've always done. That's how I was originally brought up hunting, and I really only started ground hunting the past 2 years or so, 2-3 years. But that's what you'll see a lot of, especially because the small sections of private land that there is usually gets bombarded pretty hard. So some areas you'll go in and you'll find guys love ladder stands for some reason around here. I can't stand them.
Yeah, I can't.
Guys love ladder stands. So you'll go in, you'll see doubles here and singles there and all this and that. But yeah, so we do have quite a bit of public land, and it's actually nice because all the stuff that's behind my house, technically is private land, but Massachusetts is one of those laws. If it's not clearly posted or kept up with, then you're able to just go and hunt it as if it was public. So that's also a nice way to hunt.
Man, you're lucky with that going on here.
Yeah.
Here, if you don't have permission, even if it's not posted or not purple painted, you're not allowed on it.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I'm kind of jealous of that. So the Mayflower thing, can you like get up in a tree stand and watch where the Mayflower was at and hunt deer, or what? How's that work?
Not exactly. And so I'm sure everybody knows about, Plymouth Rock and all that. They have basically a big shrine built to a rock down there. But the whole downtown area, that's where the Mayflower originally landed. It wasn't on the actual rock, obviously, but It was actually on, I believe that you'll see if you ever look at a map of it, it's a skinny little neck of sand that stretches out. And I believe they landed on that beach and then took a rowboat over. And so that area, obviously, it's all built up. You can't hunt within probably 4 or 5 miles of there and want to see anything.
They've locked all that land in, so bring in all those tourist dollars.
Oh yeah, no, they love. We get people from all around, so we get it's quite interesting in the summers getting to sit in traffic for 3 hours a day coming back from work. That's great.
So these bucks eating on these cranberries, do they get pretty big in Massachusetts? What's kind of considered a good size buck? I guess both body and rack size around where you're at.
Yeah, so I've seen guys. A lot of the time, you're really good if you get a buck within, like before getting dressed out and everything. I'd say anything 200 to like 220 is considered a really big deer here. And as far as big bucks go, on the mainland here, I've only seen, I want to see maybe 2 bucks from a tree stand. The rest have been does. Excuse me. And so I want to say the only deer I remember seeing was actually this past season. He was just a little 6-pointer, little tiny, didn't really barely even have tines or anything. And so we got 1 buck on a trail camera though. It was off of a cranberry bog, in between a cranberry bog and some power lines that go up. There's a little section of pines. And we got a buck on camera. You would have thought it was out in Kansas or Illinois or something. This thing has the tallest, it has to be at least a 10 point, I'd say. It has the tallest tines, all these briars coming off of it and everything. It is the craziest deer I've ever seen. But we didn't believe it at first because you don't usually get bucks of that caliber anywhere near here.
I know anybody listening on any other platform other than YouTube can't see this, but just for reference, these deer behind me, these are like some basket rack deer. Are those considered big where you're from? Are those considered like average, or are those on the small side?
Oh, I'd say if you were to see something like that middle one, you're having a pretty amazing season.
Yeah,
I'd say something like the one on the right. That's about an average deer for around here that I've seen anyway. I don't know. Some guys probably have secret spots tucked in some swamp or something somewhere, but I've never seen anything nearly that big on the mainland here.
Yeah, I would guess. I've never actually scored a deer, but if I was gonna guess, I'd probably say he's 80 to 100 inches, maybe. So,
okay.
Just kind of for anyone listening, kind of the reference on what size bucks are considered big in Massachusetts. So, sounds like they're more on the body size big there, but not so much the rack size.
Yeah, there is one actually right behind my house here. I saw him because we're behind my house here. It's a little thin strip of trees with a road that cuts through the middle of it, and then there's more trees, power lines, and then a whole section of woods with some, bike trails and stuff through there. But I saw this one buck. I have to think he's a 10 or a 12, and he's just wide. He's not too tall, but he's real wide. And I jumped him up once when I was walking. We used to have a dog. I was walking the dog on the trail, and I was stomped or yelled at it to get its attention, and this thing jumped up out of its bed with another buck. It was summer, so I'm assuming it was their bachelor group or whatever, but
yeah.
So that was going back maybe 2 summers now, and then this past summer, my brother came over. He's like, "Oh man, I hear something. Sounds like something's scraping up logs or something." So we're like, "Okay, let's go check it out." We walked down, and those 2 bucks again, literally 20 yards off my back lawn in the woods, rubbing up on trees and stuff, and they take off. So there's one big one back here that I'm trying to connect with this season.
Yeah, it sounds like there are some decent bucks in Massachusetts. It just seems like you have to be able to. It's kind of like the whole thing with public land. You just got to be able to narrow down exactly where he's at.
Yeah, exactly.
So where you're from, I know we touched on it a little bit, but how do people typically deer hunt? I know you said you see a lot of ladder stands, double man stands. But do you guys run dogs or hunt from the ground? Just kind of what's the style around your area? You see very many guys doing the mobile setup thing. I know that's it's big in the industry right now.
So I've never actually seen anybody else with any sort of mobile setup or anything like. I've seen guys. The most mobile is with a big lone wolf climber or something like that, because, like I said, a lot of guys, not too many people I feel like do the whole bow hunting thing around here. That's basically all I do. But I've only seen, you'll see a couple of trucks here and there, but then when shotgun season comes along, it's people hunt those 2 weeks. Our shotgun season is only like 2-3 weeks, and they hunt those real hard. And so you'll have a couple of spots, and those are only good up until the middle of November when shotgunners come, and then after that, there's no use even hunting there because you're not going to see anything.
Yeah, I think I've touched on this before, but our archery season here starts October 1st, and I'm right by Kentucky, so I hunt Kentucky as well. It's only 20 minutes from my house, but it starts September 4th, so sometimes I may stop in the gas station or stop in the farm store or something before I go grab whatever I need. But you always get those funny looks in September, September 4th, September 8th. Everybody's like walking around. It's called Rural King where I'm from. It's a farm store. And you can tell like people are like, why is that guy wearing camouflage and stuff? And I always think it's funny that the guys that are probably questioning that, they don't think about deer season until like that weekend prior to gun season. And then it's like on their brain for just a couple of weeks. And then it's long gone again. So, we have the same thing going on here. I see a few bow hunters out, but once gun season hits, it's like, it's probably like this anywhere. It's the Orange Army, as everyone calls them. There seems to be a truck every, I don't know, few hundred yards parked down the road on public land.
Yeah, and it gets a little scary. I know on not so much on the mainland here, but on Nantucket especially, there's stories. Guys out there, my dad is a surveyor. He used to do a bunch of work out there, and he was walking in some scrub brush, and a deer jumps up in front of him, and next thing you know, somebody's shooting 20 yards in front of him from a stand with a shotgun. Or there's stories of guys walking through the brush, and they see white going, so they just shoot at it and shoot out someone's van as they're driving through. So it gets a little hairy around here during shotgun. You kind of just tuck back, and that's the time for hot chocolate.
So are you guys allowed to hunt with rifles there, or is that something that's not allowed?
For deer, there's no rifle hunting allowed. Out in Western Mass, when we go for bear, you can hunt those with a rifle. Okay. But basically out here you have your bow season, which goes from, I believe it's the first Monday in October all the way through to the end of the season. You can use bow. There's 2 weeks in the middle there where you can use shotgun. And once shotgun season starts, you can also use black powder, which goes until the end of the season as well. So black powder is basically the closest you're getting to any sort of rifle hunting for deer out here.
Yeah. Yeah, Indiana used to be that way until, I don't know, it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago. It used to be called shotgun season here as well. Now I still tend to call it shotgun season just from habit, but they do allow rifles here now. I guess that has a lot to do with where you're from. It's probably population, like a lot of houses and stuff around. They don't want you to shoot rifles, I guess.
Yeah, because it's real close quarters here. Like where I live, if I were to shoot a rifle behind my house here, there's no chance I'm not almost hitting another house or a car or a hiker. It's very, very built up here, so it makes it a lot more difficult to do any sort of long range hunting.
So when it comes to like hunting, I guess you mentioned that you don't really care for ladder stands. What's kind of your tactics? Are you like hunting from a stand, or are you hunting from the ground? And I guess which one would you prefer?
So, like I said earlier, I was always taught about hunting from stands. So that's kind of the easy go-tos. You go out scouting, especially right now. We went out just to Nantucket to go set a couple of stands this weekend because those are nice and reliable. If you find a good spot, I'm just starting the whole saddle game this year. I was surprised with a gift from my family of a saddle, so I'm just starting it. But
Which
Oh,
which
sorry.
one did you get?
It was the tethered phantom is what I got.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting in the saddle game this year too. I think I'm gonna go with the
Mhm.
cruiser saddles, but I'm not 100% sure yet. I gotta get it together and get some stuff purchased. But yeah, it's interesting you're getting in that saddle game. You'll have to tell me how your season goes with that. But so back to the mobile thing, you're gonna try the saddle out this year. I guess prior to that though,
Mhm.
kind of what was your style?
Yeah, prior to that was definitely tree stand hunting. So
Okay.
going up and trying to, doing the scouting and then trying to get myself positioned. I wouldn't use climb-ons or my dad likes ladders because he has some back issues and stuff like that, so it's easier for him. But I can't stand them. I think they just stick out like a sore thumb, and I like the whole idea. I know once the deer get used to them, they're used to them, and it's going to be fine. But I love the whole idea of just being tucked up and being just almost part of the tree, just in it all. And so I know they work, but I love being 20, 30 feet up and just being able to be nice and stealthy.
Yeah, I've shot a decent amount of deer from ladder stands with a bow, but I'll tell you what, I've been busted more out of a ladder stand than I
Mm-hmm.
have out of a hang on or a climber. It just something like I guess the deer get used to the stand, but something about unless you're totally brushed into that ladder stand, which doesn't usually seem to work out that way, it's almost like they just know when there's something like a silhouette sitting in that seat that's
Mm-hmm.
empty. 3/4 of the year it's empty, and then sometimes they come by and there's like this weird 5-6 foot guy sitting in there. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it either. I think it's okay to rifle hunt out of
Mm-hmm.
maybe when they don't have to be as close, but I'm with you. I'm not a big fan on bow hunting out of ladder stands.
Yeah, because like that buck I mentioned, I saw this year, that little basket rack 6 pointer. Just he was a big body but little antlers on him. And my two tags this season, first season I actually uh, closed two of my buck tags this year. And so he came in. I was in a ladder. Came in, looked right up at me at like 5 yards. Just looked up, and I didn't move, so he was able to move around me. Of course, it's when you have both your tags filled. They mill around you for like 45 minutes.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, but same thing. He came in from the second he came in. He just looked right up. He knew I was there. So there's nothing I could even done if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's a terrible feeling. It seems like it worked out for you then, but usually when they look up at you, you you have a couple seconds before they bolt, or
Mm-hmm.
they do the old stare off and stomp, where they start kicking that leg. Do you do any hunting from the ground at all, or have you played around with that?
Yeah, that's actually, like I said, the past 2 or 3 years now, I've done that a couple of times when I'll go. So I'll do a couple of days, tree stand. If I'm not seeing anything, I'll go and find spots and walk around, and that's been way more enjoyable. I love the whole mobile setup, and yeah, no, I love hunting from the ground now, as much as I can.
Can you kind of talk about what a hunt looks like from the ground? Are you going in and like finding sign and just kind of like tucking up in some brush or popping up a blind, or are you kind of spotting, stalking, and kind of moving around?
So out here, I've tried the whole blind setup, and I'm pretty sure that just when I did it, it wasn't quite in the right area, so that's probably why I didn't see anything. But I love just walking because you can walk, you can take, a couple odd number of steps, walk like a deer, nice and quiet, and like I said, do the couple of odd number of steps, and then I like to give out a couple of little grunts here and there. I just rake the ground a couple of times, and more often than not, they'll just think you're a deer coming through. And so I was able to sneak up on one, actually, the smaller little button buck I shot. I was able to sneak up on him walking up a hill, and he jumped up, never saw me, and he just kind of snaked back around. I was able to get a shot off, but
Really, that's impressive.
it's a lot of fun. I think they're just not used to people hunting them back here because once again, it was posted for a long time, and the signs just came down. So I was very fortunate. I think he was just a stupid young deer that didn't know any better. But yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, like around where I'm from, you're probably not going to get by with a whole lot of spot and stalk. One, there's a lot of ground to cover when you start looking at like farmland and stuff. You may see a deer, you may jump a deer, and he may be a half mile across the field in 3 seconds. But it sounds like where you're from, there's a lot of houses and stuff, which keeps him from kind of bolting up towards that house or something. So it's kind of not saying that it's easy by any means, but it seems like there might be smaller patches of woods. How big would you say that woods is that you shot that deer in? Would you have any guess?
Oy. I can't really get a measurement, but let's just say to drive, it's kind of picture a rectangle, right?
Okay.
To drive it going, normal speed would probably take you less than a minute. And then driving up the long side of it, you'd probably go a good 2 or 3 minutes. So it's not a huge section of land right there, but it butts up to, just acres and acres and miles of, power lines and cranberry bogs and woods. So they're able to hop around pretty easily at night when there's no cars driving.
Yeah, that's still definitely impressive by all means. I've never spot and stalked anything other than maybe some small game, but not when it comes to deer. Them suckers are they're hard to trick, man.
Yeah, and it's definitely harder. It's not so much a spot and stalk up here as it is just walking around and hoping you hear something or see something. Because the woods down here are so thick that, especially in, we have leaves on the trees up until, going into mid to late October, we still have all the foliage on the trees up here. Yeah. And so basically the only reason I ever knew that deer was there is because he jumped up and, revealed himself. So I just stood perfectly still and hid myself behind trees. And that was the only reason I ever even saw him, was just because he was a little antsy at something. So it's definitely harder to, it's not so much spot and stalk as it is stalking and hoping you get lucky.
So I kind of want to throw in a scenario here and just kind of get your feel on what maybe you would do. I totally don't know what the terrain looks like around there because I've never been there, but I'm just gonna pretend that I do. So we're gonna say that you have let's say 100 acres to hunt, and I'm gonna say that there are some hills in there and some cranberry bogs is what you called them, right?
Yep.
We're gonna say there's one, or let's just say there's one of those kind of like near the center, and it's kind of like a bowl, so you got some elevation up here, right here, and the cranberry bogs down in here, and you got, let's see, over on this far side you've got maybe a pine thicket. And then on the other side, the opposite side, you have some oaks. So you're going to go in there, let's say pre-rut. Kind of what would you do if you were going to go in and try to get one from the ground?
If I were to try to get one from the ground, I think what I would do is definitely do so like up here at Sundays we can't hunt. So I've heard a lot about in-season scouting. So going down, seeing where the fresh sign is at. But I think, just off the top of my head, probably setting yourself right on the edge of a good access into that cranberry bog.
Okay.
Because they might be bedding in the pine thicket, they might be bedding on that hillside, whatever. But either way, they're going to be coming at least out of there in the mornings from feeding, going to there to feed in the evening, and then depending on how thick it is, some of them are really grown up where you could go in there and there's 4-foot pine trees all real close together that they just bed in the middle of the cranberry bog and never leave in the middle of the woods when they get grown up like that. And so definitely if you can find a main runway going on and off of that where they're using that to access that in the mornings and the evenings, then that's definitely a spot to set up right on and see if you can catch them coming and going from that, I'd say.
So around here, I don't know if you know anything about hunting around soybeans, but soybeans, the deer will feed on in the summertime when they're green. And then once they start to like ripen, I guess, they turn yellow and the deer kind of get turned off by them. And then once they turn brown again, it seems like the deer, right before they harvest them or whatever, they get real brown and the deer turn on to them again, but they don't really care for them when they're yellow. Um, are cranberries, they have any kind of funky thing like that? Like they don't like them until they're really ripe, or maybe they like them kind of not as ripe. Is there like any kind of dead period, I guess, for cranberries?
Yeah, definitely, because it's something that's mass produced in there. They try to get everything out of there as they can, and so as long as they're growing there, the deer are going to keep on coming every morning and evening, whatever they're doing, to come and eat that little section they have. And then, like I said, they flood them so that the deer can't get to them because it's flooded. They reduce it back down, collect all the cranberries out of there, and then basically the deer from that point are just going after scraps. So whatever's left over, whatever hasn't been harvested. So once that's depleted, that's gone until next fall when the crop comes back. And so I'd say that it's probably only really good for the first quarter to half of the deer season, I'd say.
Okay.
Kind of right up through the peak rut, maybe a little bit before that, and then after that you're kind of on your own.
Will deer ever swim out in those and feed or walk out in them?
I've never seen they get pretty deep, especially in those trenches.
Oh, do they?
When the water's down, like in the summer, when you walk past them, you can see frogs and stuff in them. They're maybe in those trenches, probably a good 3.5 feet deep. And so, depending on the bog, that water can rise to probably 6 feet in some spots.
Huh.
Easy. So I've never seen a deer going in the water. It could be possible, but
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Maybe if there was an instance where they were flooded and there wasn't a whole lot of food around, they might take the plunge to try to swim out there and eat if they didn't have anything else. But sounds like they probably don't want to be swimming around eating a bunch of cranberries in the wintertime, because I imagine it gets cold there too.
Yeah, like I said, I've never seen that's not something I've ever seen. I know that when they don't have that food source, they obviously, acorns are a huge thing everywhere. So they have acorns to eat on. A couple of spots here and there, you have sections of beech trees, so they love those too. Beech, they have. Oh, what's the other one they have there? Holly. They eat all holly buds and all the leaves off of that. We've seen, and kind of just anything. I've seen deer eat the weirdest stuff. We saw them the other day. We saw signs where they were eating the bottoms. They weren't even grown trees of leaves on them. It looked like just dried dead trees, and they're gnawing on the bottoms of those to get the bark off. So I've seen them eat the weirdest stuff. So they have plenty of food.
They forage for some weird stuff. I'm sure there's a reason why they eat that stuff, but sometimes I see deer and I'm like, why are they eating that? But I'm not a biologist, so I'm not 100% on why they're always eating the stuff that they do.
Yep.
So I always find it interesting to kind of hear from people about things like scent control and camo and kind of like the technical stuff when it comes to deer hunting. What are some of your pet peeves or like must do's when it comes to deer hunting? And what are some of the things that you don't really worry about so much? I know I don't personally watch like outdoor TV on, like on cable or whatever. But I know a lot of that stuff gets passed on and people feel like they have to do whatever they see on there. But I was just kind of wondering what you consider to be essential when deer hunting, and what kind of you can just toss out and not really worry about for yourself.
Yeah, well, the first thing you hear all the time is scent control, of course. And so, I do think that there's part of that, but when we were first getting into it, we were taught, me and my dad and my brother, from the few people that we learned from, it was, okay, you shower before you get out there, you wash all of your clothes, you spray all your stuff when you get out there, you spray your boots. If you touch anything, you spray your bag, you spray this. Basically, anything and everything is contaminated until you get to the tree stand. And I've even seen that, like you said, on some of the TV, you'll see these knuckleheads out there, and they bring scentless like laundry wipes to the tree, and they wipe down their tree pegs as they walk up. And while it doesn't hurt, a deer is going to smell you if a deer is going to smell you, regardless. And so I still do it to a measure. So I'll shower before I go out. I'll wash all my clothes and the scentless stuff. But if I come back for lunch, I'm not going to shower all over again, get new clothes on. I might get a new outer layer on. But as far as the major, spraying down your bow if it touches, the carpet in your house, or spraying down your boots if it touches, the bed of your truck. That's a lot of that stuff's a little ridiculous to me, and so I found that simplifying it, because once again, either way, if the deer catches your wind, it's going to catch you. You can't eliminate human scent 100%.
Yeah, I for years and years and years, I do shower before I hunt. I use I think it's, oh gosh, now it slipped my mind. It's a bar soap. It's probably Scent-Away bar soap or something super cheap. I have short hair, so I just wash my hair with that, wash my body with that. And I do wash my clothes. I used to use like a Scent-Away detergent. Now I just use regular laundry detergent that's scent-free. I just use it in my clothes all year. I don't have to worry about buying a $8 or $10 bottle of scent-free detergent. I just buy that stuff all year, and I don't ever have to worry about it. But as far as the spraying down goes, I was super big into spraying down everything for years. And not in 2021, but in 2020, I started to taper off of it a little bit and kind of play around with, does it really matter? And I didn't really see a whole lot of difference. So 2021 rolled around, I didn't use Scent-Away or any kind of fresh earth or any kind of spray at all one time last year, and it was my best year yet. I killed the most deer I ever have in a season. So I'm kind of turned off by that whole idea now. And something that I started to think about was, am I really killing the scent, or am I just adding more scent down to the ground that came out of that bottle? Because I mean, it may smell odorless to me, but does it smell odorless to a deer? And I don't know if I've ever heard anyone kind of talk about like that spray actually having a scent to it. But I don't know, that fresh earth, it smells like dirt, but it also kind of smells like chemicals. So I kind of wonder if maybe sometimes that's hurting people.
Yeah, and I don't know, this could be just completely me being a weirdo, but if like after you spray down, wash all your clothes, so your clothes are technically, according to the bottle, completely scentless. But when I open up that clothes bin, there is a certain, it's not the absence of smell. That's not what it is. But there's a certain thing where you go, okay, yeah, that's what scentless clothes smells like. And if you're able to say that, then it's not scentless.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I've had the same thoughts. I used to store my clothes in like a just like a container or whatever, I guess. But I had the same thoughts. Like, you would put it in there, you'd wash it, you get all excited like in August, 2 months before deer season, and you like put it in there and you like seal the container in a bag and tie it in another bag, and it's like completely supposed to be scentless. And then you open it up and it's like, it's not like a chemical smell, but it's like something there. It's just kind of like really hard to explain. So I don't know. I got away from that. I don't know. I was a believer for it in years, and maybe people put that in my head, but anymore, I'm just wiping my boots in some mud, a mud hole. I don't wear my boots to a gas station or anything. I don't want to step in like somebody's gas that they dropped on the ground when I stop in the morning, to get a drink or some food. But as far as like spraying down my clothes and my bow and chewing scent-free gum and all that stuff, I'm just not buying into it anymore.
Yeah, because, well, like you said, I believe you said it was this past season was your best one yet, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because that was kind of the same for me. And like I said, with this button buck, I think, once again, nothing can be said about that deer, because I think there's a very good chance it was just an unintelligent deer. Didn't have enough years yet. But same thing, I came in, I just was like, man, it was just after a hurricane. I might as well, there was some big old like 4x4 scrapes down in there just recently, I'm assuming from that big buck. So I was like, I'm going to go check it right after the storm. Why not? So didn't wash up, didn't shower, just basically tossed a hunting shirt over my work shirt, over my work pants I'd been in all day. And just went down there. So I think a big part of it too, what we're starting to do this year is just play the wind. If you can play the wind a certain way where, because especially if you're not scented down all the way, you're never going to be. If you can play the wind a certain way where it's just going to be where that deer's never going to smell you, or if it's going to be just a couple of extra steps it's going to give you a shot until it does, then that's probably the best way to go about things. Instead of worrying about 100% of your scent gone, which you're never going to do, worry about where the scent you are carrying is going to go.
So I know people in every state do things different. So let's just do like a scenario that you just shot a deer.
Mm-hmm.
What's kind of the process look like as far as getting the deer out and getting it processed? Are you guys real big on butchering it out in the field or quartering it up out in the field? Or do you drag it out whole, take it to a meat locker? Do you take it to your house? Do guys around there or girls too, I guess, do you guys use like four-wheelers or side-by-sides? I know around here I hunt by myself a lot, and I'm always dragging deer out. Seems like a half a mile or a mile by myself, but I'm interested to see what people from Massachusetts or what you guys kind of do once you get one down.
Yeah, so for us, we're always dragging it out whole, because we all live in most of the part, such close proximity to where we hunt that we can take it. I can't take it here because I just have an upstairs apartment, so I usually take it to my dad's house now down the Cape, down on Cape Cod, and he has a garage I can hang it in. But yeah, so we're usually, wherever we find it, if it's open enough there, we'll either do a quick rip and grin photo there, or we'll drag it out where it's a little clearer, do that. And then usually we're dragging it away from our hunting spot and gutting it out, getting all that garbage out, and then dragging it either to the truck, or if it's, say, like some power lines, we just drag it to the edge and then drive the truck down to it. So there's not too many ATV access trails or four-wheeler trails around here where you could do that. So it's mostly just dragging it to wherever your vehicle's at.
Good old dead weight. It's fun to drag through the woods.
Yep, exactly.
So do you guys take your deer to a meat locker, or do you guys do that yourselves at your house or at your dad's?
My dad and brother, they like taking theirs to the processor to get it done, but I'm a lot more comfortable. I get real anal about everything being super clean, and I trust that the butcher is going to do it. You know, it's his business. It's, you know, his name and all that. But I'm a lot more confident doing it myself, and so I know that I might not get as much from it. I usually get, you know, some steaks, a couple of roasts, and I think this year from two of my deer I got maybe. That was a decent haul. That was like 10, 15 pounds of burger, I'd say. And so it's a little bit more work. Usually it's about a whole day, maybe two if you're grinding it all up that day. But I find it's a lot more, it brings me a lot more enjoyment out of it too. Because that's the whole point of getting into hunting, is seeing the meal on your plate come from the land. And so I like keeping that process all the way down to the end personally.
Yeah, it's super rewarding to be part of the whole process. I think a lot of people miss out on that. They shoot the deer, they scout, they shoot the deer, and then once the deer is shot, it's just like they just get it back. I don't know. It's almost like the deer falls over and it turns into like rolls of salami, which isn't the case. You know, there's so much more after the deer is shot when it comes to butchering and knowing how to cut it up right and knowing how to get the fat off, you know, the right way so you don't get it mixed up in your meat. And Grit is a small creative agency that specializes in helping outdoor industry brands of all sizes grow their business. At Grit, they help develop branding and create advertising materials to increase awareness and drive traffic. To learn more about Grit's services and portfolio, you can visit www.downtogrit.com, or you can inquire by email at info@downtogrit.com. But yeah, I think a lot of people probably take theirs to the processor around here. I know I do some of the time. I'd probably say 50% of the time I do. And a lot of it has to do with it's the rut and I don't have time, and it's not cold enough to hang the deer sometimes. And I just got to get back out. So sometimes I have to take it to where it can get cooled off, or in September, October, it's warm out. I might not be hunting the next day, but if I don't get it to a locker or a freezer within a couple hours, it's going to be spoiled, and there's just no way.
Yeah.
So when you butcher a deer at home, is there any tips or anything special that you've learned kind of through the years that you think would help listeners kind of process their deer themselves, maybe if they're doing it now or maybe if they plan to do it in the future? Any special tricks or tips that you've learned, whether it be how to hang it or how to cut your stakes out, anything like that?
Mhm. Yeah, so I've seen it done. I've done it quite a couple of ways. What we usually do, we get the gambrel that you go through the hamstrings with and just hook them up by the feet first.
Mm-hmm.
And then just recently I saw, I think it was Steven Ranella on Meat Eater did something about how you hang them by the neck and that helps the hide come off easier. I thought that actually made it a little harder, maybe just because I wasn't used to that method of doing it. But I'd say, I mean, if I were to do it, I would just hoist it up by the feet and do it that way. Start at the hamstrings and just work your way all the way down. And then, I mean, we've even tried. You ever seen the golf ball method?
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
never actually tried it. I've thought about it, but have you given it a shot?
we have. I have a very old Snapchat video of us in a buddy's garage, him yanking it off with an ATV, and it ends up like ripping the front shoulder off, completely ruining the front shoulder. It was more just for giggles than anything, but
Yeah.
yeah. So if you want to do it the right way, don't use a golf ball. Just hang it up by its hamstrings, I'd say.
Yeah.
And then, oh sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
And then I know that my first few times doing it, it looks really overwhelming because now you just have this whole animal. You don't know where the certain cuts are and all this and that. So if you can learn where just the main ones are and learn basically, like, back straps are easy. You just follow the spine down and basically there's a line that you can follow that just tells you where everything is. So where some guys usually end it like, right above the shoulder and maybe right at the end of the spine, if you just follow, I mean, just get your fingers in there, you can get an extra, 8-9 inches out of a back strap if you just follow it all the way down where it goes. And then it's a lot easier. Some people say, what is steak? What is burger? And obviously there's way better people than me to do it. I'm just some kid from Plymouth who just likes to cut up deer for my freezer. So if you watch someone like, the Bearded Butchers on YouTube, they're great. They'll walk you through a whole deer processing, but kind of the main thing I've learned is the front shoulder tends to be a lot more tough. So if you can devote a lot of that to like the ground pile, and then if you get a real big deer, the hind quarter, you can get some of that silver skin off of there, and you'll basically see lines where all those steaks kind of just are right there for you. So you can get, I know, at least one good roast out of each hind leg and try to cut some steaks out, and whatever doesn't come up as steaks, or if it's a little too bloody for your liking or you don't like the way it looks, you can just cut it up and toss that right in the grind pile too. So
I know a lot of people are intimidated, but I would think that I would say, I guess, that starting with a hind quarter would be a good way for somebody to kind of learn how to cut it, because when you talk about the lines, it's kind of hard for people to picture. But if you have one in front of you, what Evan's saying is you can kind of like slide your finger through there and just run your knife, and it just kind of cuts the steak for you, per se, like the thickness and everything. You just kind of follow those muscle groups down and cut them, and it's super easy. But the shoulders are a little more tricky, like you said. You gotta kind of work around that blade and all that stuff. But hindquarters, if you're trying to learn how to butcher, that's kind of a good place to start.
yeah, and then another thing, I know when I first started, it was just let the knife do all the work and cut. But what I'm finding out more and more, and what people have probably told me that I just didn't listen to them at first, is that the greatest tool you probably have when you're doing that is your whole hand, your fingers. If you can get your fingers in there, especially like some parts of the hindquarters, like the back strap, a lot of the times if you start the cut and just add pressure or get your finger curved in there, that meat will basically separate itself right on those seams. So instead of going through, you could be chopping up a prime cut if you're using your knife, but if you get your finger down and run it and loosen it all up first, it'll free itself up real nice for you.
Yeah, a lot of people, I've noticed that too. If you just kind of stick your hand in there, it's almost like it just peels out. And probably a lot of people just want to start hacking. I've seen people just start hacking at like a deer, and I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, and it's totally okay the way they're doing it if they're going to grind it up, I guess. But like, I've seen people just kind of take a quarter and just, the lines and the muscle groups, they would be going opposite. So instead of cutting into that line, they'd just be sawing into the
Oh,
quarter. And I'm like, I mean, I guess if you're going to grind it, but that's no way to get steaks and roasts and stuff out. But it's a learning experience. I guess, thank God we have YouTube
yep.
nowadays. You can pretty much learn anything on there. Um, but yeah, have you ever played around with saving the bones, cooking the bones, or eating the marrow out of them?
I haven't tried that yet. I saw that on something just recently, and I asked my wife. She just came home from something. I was like, "What do you think about eating marrow?" And she stopped. She goes, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "I eat enough weird stuff. I don't need that." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. That might be a little too weird for me. I like to branch out and do whatever I can. Like I love one of my favorite cuts is the heart. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorites. But anything else other than that is might be a little too adventurous for me. I'm gonna see how it goes though.
I told myself this past season 2021 that I was going to save the bones, and
Mhm.
I think I think I shot 7 deer this year, and I think I butchered 2 or 3, and I was going to save the bones. And you know how it gets, like when you skin it and quarter it, and you get to the end, and you're like cutting everything up for the grind pile, and you're just like wore out. It's the rut,
Yep.
and you're just like completely just like, why do I do this to myself? I ended up tossing the bones instead of saving them, and I super regret it now. But
Mhm.
next year I'm gonna do the bone marrow
All
thing.
right. There you go.
I've heard it's super good, but we'll see. How do you like to cook your heart, and how do you like soak it after you take it out of the deer? Do you cut it all up and soak it in salt water or anything, or do you just straight up freeze it? What's that kind of look like?
Yeah, I've just recently heard of the whole soaking part, so I'm gonna try that. That's actually what I do with most of my steaks now because I'll clean them off real good and then I'll freezer them, and then when I go to cook them, I'll soak them in water, and that draws all out of the whatever residual blood and stuff out of it. But I haven't tried that. Whenever I've had heart, it was the night after harvesting it, and so I just go in the kitchen, you just chop it up, and you usually end up with like 2 to 4 little, very thin little fillets that I just wash off real good and make sure nothing's there, and then every time I've had it, you just fry it up with some butter, minced garlic, and maybe some salt and pepper. And I just like it simple, and it is so good. I love
Yeah,
it.
that's my little go-to. Garlic powder, salt and pepper, some
Yep.
butter, some olive oil, just nice and simple. But what I like to do with it is I like to, cut it up and get all the meat, however it's supposed to be, and then soak it in salt water 2, 3, 4 days. And I'm
Mhm.
telling you, you would be shocked at the amount of
Hmm.
blood that comes out of that.
Yeah. Now, do you just leave it in the fridge when you do that? You just put it in the salt water, leave it in the fridge for 2 to 3 days.
Yep, leave it covered, completely covered in water, and then I put a lid on it and soak it for 2 or 3 days. And when you pull it out, um, it's more similar in color to like a backstrap would be. You know how heart's a little more dark or whatever,
Oh
but
yeah.
yeah, I mean the water is always super bloody. So
Hmm.
it does help. I think I don't know how much it matters, but it definitely pulls a lot of blood out for sure.
Oh, that's a great. Yeah. No, that's great to know for sure.
So I want to jump to Massachusetts laws and restrictions. I know
Mhm.
you told me that you guys can't hunt there on Sundays.
Yep.
Um, what other kind of like laws or restrictions do you guys have that you think might be a little bit on the weird side, or is there anything that people should be aware of before traveling there to hunt?
So I know the first thing comes with actually getting your licenses is when you buy your license, you just assume that okay, I have all my deer tags here, I can just go out and hunt. But you need, if you're going to hunt with a bow, you need a $5 archery stamp, you need a $5 primitive firearm stamp, $5 shotgun stamp. So whatever implements you're going to be using, even though they say you can hunt the deer, it's an extra $5 to use that tool to hunt the deer that you had the tags for. So that's a little odd, but so
That
I
is
would
weird.
definitely be aware of that. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous, but then I've never even shot a crossbow. But for instance, if anybody is mainly a crossbow hunter, you can only hunt with those here if you're disabled of some sort.
Okay.
So like we have a friend who has cerebral palsy. He can hunt with a crossbow just fine, but me or somebody else, I think you need a letter, either a letter or a note from your doctor that you send in to the DNR, something weird like that you need in order to hunt with a crossbow. And then I'm trying to think of anything else that would be helpful. I mean, the one law I read over and I still don't understand is that the use of dogs not to hunt. I understand you want dogs getting shot or anything like that. But even after you shoot something, if you want to blood trail and find your animal, that's illegal here. You can't use a dog for any sort of hunting anything, which is, I think if it helps you get the deer that you shot, then you should go for it. But so that just seems a little odd to me.
I had a feeling that's where you were going with that dog thing. No,
Yep.
I've heard that in other states that's not allowed, and I've never been able to figure out why on earth they wouldn't let you use a dog to track a wounded or a dead deer. They do make it very specific, at least in my state, that you should give it all your effort to find whatever you shot. So it seems a little bit kind of redundant to say you can shoot, especially, archery comes with a lot of tracking.
Yeah.
Usually. Seems a little bit odd that they would let you archery hunt and then expect you to find your animal but not be able to use a dog. I have never really totally looked into maybe the reasoning why they don't allow it, but I don't see it. I don't see the reasoning.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is say, because obviously there's a lot of dishonest people out there too.
Yeah.
And so somebody could easily go in the woods with their dog and their bow, use their dog to jump something up and shoot it and go, oh no, I brought him in here to help me track it. Like, I can show you the blood trail and everything. So I guess in that regard, I do understand it, but I feel like if you had, even if it's state managed or whatever, however you would do that, some method to do that, I feel like would be acceptable. But that's the only way I can see it being reasonable.
Yeah. So anybody listening, if you go to Massachusetts and you want to track a deer, a wounded deer, a dead deer, don't take your dog with you because game warden's going to get you.
Yep. And then
So,
I guess. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say another one helpful is that the one thing I do love, if a deer has 3 inches or less of antler, it's considered antlerless. And so if you shoot a little button buck or a little spike horn, it's fine. Your buck tag isn't gone for the year. So I take full range of that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's a law in more states than not. I know it's the same way in Indiana, and I believe Kentucky's the same way too. The other state, well, Massachusetts, obviously, you just mentioned, but that's 3 states right there. I don't know if Ohio and Illinois and all that stuff around me is like that too. But do you know if it's like that in any other states around you?
I personally have no idea. I'm not familiar with any other regs in any other states.
Yeah, it's I understand that one. I think a lot of people, it's last light, a deer's 35, 40 yards away. It can happen. I've done it myself actually during archery season. It was first deer I ever shot. I thought was a doe, and I ended up shooting it, and it was like short. It was like 2.5 inches or 2 inches or something. So I get that, but the dog thing, nah, I don't get it.
Yeah. Nope, me neither. I think it's ridiculous.
So you mentioned that you take that week-long trip during the rut to Nantucket every year. Can you kind of explain what hunting on that island looks like and what type of, I guess you're just hunting deer over there, right?
Yeah, so basically it's a really, really small island. You can drive from one end to the other in, probably under 20 minutes. It's a real, real small island. And so the ground, it's basically flat. It's flat, a lot of swamps, a lot of, I don't even know what the foliage is, but it's impossible to walk through it unless you have hedge trimmers. Even then, it would take you hours to get through it. It is the thickest nastiest briary filled stuff you've ever seen.
Huh.
And so,
sounds like a good place for deer to be.
oh, they love it. And the thing is, there's no other predators. The deer were brought over there and introduced over there, and there's no actual predators over there. So the deer have just rebounded. There's so many. I know many years ago they were considering doing, I think they do it with hogs too, the military sharpshooters to come in and call the herds.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's kind of nice because in Massachusetts you have different wildlife zones. So for instance, here I'm in zone 11. And so with my tag, you have a chance to get a doe permit if you go early enough, and then later on you can get another doe permit. Out there, zone 14, you can get 4 doe permits a day.
Oh my gosh.
So if you go out and blast 4 does in one day, go on the next night, purchase 4 more, and you're good to go for the next day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there how do you guys get to and from the island? Is there like a ferry or something that you put your truck on, take it across?
Yep. There's a big ferry. It takes about 3 hours to get out there. So it's a nice, easy ride though.
And then are you like camping out there? Is there like hotels to stay in?
There's actually no camping allowed on the island. Most of the houses you'll see out there, you'll see a little 2-bedroom place that's easily, I don't know, $8 million for it's a very expensive island. And so what we do is, I think it's an Airbnb we all stay at. So there's like 7 or 8 of us, and we'll all, pitch in and split it a few ways, but that's your best bet, is to get an Airbnb of some sort. So preferably not downtown, because we did that once and we got deer. And next thing you know, there's all windows, and it's all very rich, high-end people that don't want to look out and see a bunch of guys in camo hanging and processing deer. So you got to look out for that too.
Rich, high-end people love to eat deer meat, but they don't like to see it with the fur on it.
Oh no, I remember we were getting ice to stick in it, and some old lady came out and started giving me all her fury. She was like, I don't know how you do that, this and that. And her husband, thing is, that was a weird part. Her husband was behind me giving me a thumbs up. So I don't know what the whole dynamic there was, but she didn't like it.
Yeah, that's he's just maybe he's playing the part for his wife when he's in the house, but really he wants to go deer hunting.
I guess, yeah.
So I guess you kind of answered the question that I had, was why hunt the island, but I guess that's because the population is so high.
Yeah, the population. And then like I was saying, on the mainland, I've only seen a certain number of bucks from the stand. Out there, you can see quite a few deer from the stand, and depending on where you go, it's kind of a very neat, interesting type of woods over there too. It's because you don't get that type of stuff over here, where you'll get really swampy low areas, but the trees are, I know they're oak trees, but they go up almost like a snake would go up, is how they grow. And it's just forest full of that. And so the opportunities for different types of hunting, like I love the ground hunting out there, is great, especially because you get in these thickets and the deer trails look like tunnels. So you can follow these tunnels through, find yourself little pine thickets. So the hunting styles out there, you get a lot more versatility with what you can do with a lot more deer. And it leads to a lot more really awesome encounters and stuff.
So is that public land that you guys are hunting out there, or is it like private that you've locked in?
Yeah, no, it's all public so far. There's actually one set of private where I would like to get permission going into this upcoming trip this year. But yeah, no, that's all public. People, there's a very large number of hunters, and people are very used to hunters coming and taking trips out there in the fall. But as a whole, it doesn't seem like people are real open to the idea of hunting. It seems like a real Connecticut type situation where it's a lot of people with money that don't really like the idea of having dead animals on their property and this and that. So it's kind of a tough balance there.
Yeah, I was getting ready to ask you, I imagine the people that live there, let's see how to word this. I imagine, I'll just say fancier people maybe have like maybe well-kept flower gardens, stuff like that. I imagine that the deer have to get in some of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever thought about doing some door knocking and being like, hey, look, I know you're not really like into this, but like I know these deer are eating all your roses. Like it'll help me out if I can eat these deer, get rid of them for you. It'll help you out. They won't eat your roses. I don't know. I just kind of like thinking outside the box. Maybe
Mhm.
you lay in some private permission doing that way, or do you think most people there are just kind of going to shrug you off?
Well, because that is definitely an issue out there because they're viewed more as pests than they are actually like, hey, a beautiful deer in my yard. But the thing out there is that so many of those multi-million dollar homes are summer homes or vacation homes. So you
Oh,
can go and knock on a door, but the chances of you finding someone home are not that great. And then even if you do get permission, so many where there are houses, they're very up close next to each other. And so there's not a very good chance of you even being able to set up on their property, very much less shoot a deer and have it not run onto someone else's property where now you have to go and try to knock on their door and they're not home. So you have to, I'm not saying you should do sketchy stuff to retrieve it. I'm saying that I'm not even going to get myself in trouble.
is that a law in Massachusetts that you got to have permission to retrieve a deer on private land, or are you allowed to go after it, or do you know?
I believe it goes back to that whole thing of if it's posted, you're free game. I
Oh,
don't
that's right.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know about whether if you have a deer and you see posted signs. If I believe that's just the end of it. You need to get in touch with them in order to do it. But I'm not. We don't really run into that problem too much personally, so I've never had to look into it.
Yeah. Man, I'm jealous of that whole postage rule. You ought to drive around there and find some vacation homes. People
Mm-hmm.
only spend time there in the summer. They're not there in the fall. Um, make sure that it's not all posted up. Then you can just hunt there. They won't even know you're there. It's not illegal because it's not posted.
No, yeah,
Sounds
just go
like
sit up on their porch with a couple of drinks and just wait for the deer to come. See what
sounds
they
like a
do.
win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
Have you do you deal with any of the I guess you said they're most vacation homes, but I'm sure there are some people that live there locally. Have you ever dealt with any of them and offered them some deer meat or anything like that to kind of make amends, or make a slip into their woods if they'll let you kind of pay them off, so to speak? I don't know.
No, no, not particularly yet. Just because, especially on the island, we're there for only a week, and we have really, really good spots that we can hunt. So really, the need for going on private land really isn't there too much either, because we have a couple of good spots that we have really high hopes in, and then especially with some of the ground access, you can go and walk some of these open areas. So the need to go on private land really isn't there too much.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How big would you say that piece of public is that you guys hunt?
Oh, I couldn't even begin to tell you. There's
Giant.
yeah, and because the way the island's kind of broken up is because it's so packed into tight areas, you kind of have pockets. So we have a couple of spots that we say, like, we had, the pines. There's thousands of pine thickets, but we had that one little section of pines that we had kind of nailed down for a little bit. Or you have, the burn spot, the squam spot, all these different spots that you just kind of, because there are huge parcels of public, but you really need to narrow it down because of the huge, all that you'll go and see, a dozen tree stands here, a dozen here. So you have to just find the pockets in the public, basically.
So, you guys are near the coast there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do any kind of fishing out in the ocean or anything like that? I imagine there's got to be all kinds of good fish to eat around you.
Yeah, I know the striper migration comes up each year, and so they follow the herring up and through. And so my brother and my dad was always trying to get me into that when I was little, and I never followed suit with that too much. I went on my first striper charter. What was it? It was during COVID, so I guess 2 summers ago now. One of my first striper charter, and that was a blast. That was so much fun. My brother caught a 43-inch, I believe, was his striper, and as he was reeling that up, we had a great white chasing it.
Oh, no kidding.
So yeah, so as far as getting out and doing saltwater by myself, I don't know what to do with that. I'm not too good at it yet, but freshwater is more my game. That's where I love to go early mornings.
What do you go for freshwater around you?
Mostly largemouth, but especially like even right now, if I could slip in, there's one little pond that we love to go to all the time. So if I could get in there now, I know I can catch some decent sized pickerel too.
All right, I'm gonna bring this. I'm gonna bring this up. I've brought it up in the past, so we're gonna get your thoughts on this.
All right.
So you're catching largemouth bass, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you eat them, or are you a guy that's like anti-eating largemouth bass?
If I could eat them, I would. I absolutely would. But the only thing around here is that a lot of the water around here has very high mercury levels. A lot of the fresh water.
Huh.
And so anything you take from there, like like I said, I'm adventurous. I would love if I could to try snapping turtle, frog, largemouth, pickerel. I've heard is delicious. But if I have to look at a chart that says you can eat this amount before it turns dangerous, then I'm best just leaving it and releasing it because yeah. So it gets that's kind of the sad part is basically all the freshwater you do here has to be catch and release for the most part.
Wow, that for me, that'd be it for me because I'm going fishing for keeps. I'm not going fishing
Yep.
for funds. What's the reason there's so much mercury in freshwater there? Do you know?
I couldn't tell you. I don't think it has to do with because obviously a lot of those are off of cranberry bogs and stuff like that. I don't think it has anything to do with the runoff. I completely forget what the reasoning behind it is. I just know the levels are high enough where native species really isn't the best. But like for instance, there's a pond down the street where they release trout into it each year. And so those you can go and fish for those and catch and eat those and have no worries. But any of the native species are kind of iffy.
Ooh, so you never tried largemouth, never tried frog?
Not yet. I would like to. Actually, have I tried frog? I think I've tried frog somewhere.
Yeah,
Maybe.
man, they're to die. Frog legs are to die for. It. Not the ones you buy from the store either. I mean, they're okay, but like it's hard to beat fresh and wild, as I'm
Yeah.
sure you know.
That's what I've heard. I've heard they're awesome.
Yeah, man. If you ever come to Indiana, we got plenty of stripper pits around here, which are basically where they've dug out for coal years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They're big, giant pits that now are lakes, but there's all kinds of frogs and crappie and largemouth bass, and you can definitely eat them out of here. So I'm definitely pro eating largemouth bass. I know a lot of guys are big bass fishermen, and that's like a sin to eat a largemouth bass, but not for me. I love them.
Oh, I'm pro too if I could. I'm all over that.
So you're recently married, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. This past September.
Congrats on that.
Oh, thank you.
So do you have any advice? Do you have any advice for like getting your wife out in the woods? Does she kind of go with you, or is she you do your thing and I'll stay here and just kind of reap the benefits of you bringing the steak home?
No, so for the most part, it started off early when we were first even just talking. It was, explaining what exactly you do on the weekends, how you spend your time, and then eventually, if you just do it in a respectful enough manner, hopefully they'll be okay with it. And so I think it's important, too, to include them in every aspect of the hunt. And so, for instance, now that it's scouting season, we love just going scouting out areas and walking in the woods. And it doesn't need to be, I'm not saying bring them in the gross, briary, poison ivy thicket where that big buck's hiding. But I'm saying if you can, go walk some power lines, that's where we went. We walked some nice power lines. We're able to see deer, follow tracks. I was able to teach a little bit, I hope, maybe. So anything like that. And then hopefully if you come in excited enough, like I did, I just came in and said, hey, I shot a deer. Do you want to come help me gut it and drag it out? And hopefully they're a big enough weirdo like you, they'll be all over that and want to come help you. So
my wife has no choice. I'm red-green colorblind, so anytime I shoot a deer and I can't get on the blood trail, she has to come help me. I cannot see blood whatsoever during the daytime. Seems like, it could be the brightest blood trail in the world on green leaves, and I'm like, can you please come help me? I cannot find blood. And she's like, it's all over. It looks like a murder scene. I'm like, I think a lot of guys, I guess, that take their wives or girlfriends hunting. I think they ruin them by, they wait till gun season. They wait till it's 14 below zero outside.
Yep.
They stick them in a blind or a stand, a stand super cold because it's all steel. They either sit all day and they don't see anything, or they go and they see something in the first 5 minutes and the guy, shoots and he makes a little bit of a bad shot and he has to take a second
Mhm.
shot. And I think like not including the whole process kind of, a lot of times turn people, or like your wife or girlfriend, or maybe it's the girl taking the guy. I don't know. But I think like the whole process kind of helps somebody appreciate and understand it rather than just kind of the shot, or just kind of like going one or two times and freezing to death and not having any
Mhm.
luck.
Yeah, and that's why I'm fortunate too to have this area back here, like I keep on mentioning. But I was able to take, it's a nice, easy, it's all open, nice open walk. And the thing is, there's deer back there, so your chance of at least seeing something are there. If you can walk away, seeing whether you have somebody with you or not, if you can walk away seeing a deer, then I consider that a good day, any day. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
being able to take a nice, easy walk, sit down. I like to go, or when I took her out this year, it was middle of October. And so it's still green on the trees. I think the high or the low for the day was probably in the 40s, mid 40s was the low during that time. And so the only thing that stinks is that the mosquitoes are all out. So I just, you wrap your faces up, and I like to put the war paint on and all that. But yeah, so as much as you can, just make it enjoyable, I guess. Not just your version of enjoyable as someone who likes to go and sit in the snow and wait for something to come along for 8 hours, but make it as enjoyable as you can.
Yeah. Are you familiar with a thermocell for mosquitoes? Have you ever used one of those?
We used to have one in our basement, just in our junk pile, and I've never actually used one, just because most of the time we're so high up in the stand they don't affect us. But it was just this past year they got real bad, so I've never actually used one.
That thing, I promise you, will change your life.
Really?
Yeah, I remember when those first came out, I started using one. Um, Maybe they'd been out a couple years, but nobody I knew was using them. Nobody I saw was using them. They were like stuck in a corner somewhere at Walmart, and I bought one, and I've never looked back. And an early archery season, I'm not
Hmm.
going out without it. I
Huh.
absolutely swear by that thing.
I'd always be worried it would affect the deer to some extent, if whether they smell it or they hear it or anything. But you've never noticed anything with that?
It does have a little bit of a smell to it. They make regular mats that you slide a little mat in there or whatever, but they make the regular ones and then they make like a fresh earth one.
Hmm.
But I've always just used the regular ones, and I'll carry like some bedding scent or just some dopey, and it's probably not the best thing to do. But sometimes it'll smoke a little bit, and I'll just
Hmm.
mist it with that deer pee or that bedding scent.
Hmm.
It doesn't really smell the greatest, but I haven't had any issues with it.
That's a
I
good
think
idea. Yeah.
I think as long as you play the wind, it's just like you.
Hmm.
You could probably be smoking a big giant cigar, and as long as you're playing the wind, it's probably not going to affect them.
Yep, exactly. Okay, that's good to know for sure. I'm gonna invest in one now.
Oh yeah, they that's $20 or $30 you'll ever spend.
Perfect.
So, has your wife? Is she going to get behind the gun or the bow? She plan on shooting a deer, or is that plans for the future?
I don't believe so. In her words, I think it was just this past week. Her words were she likes every single part of deer hunting except for the boom part.
The boom part, yeah.
So I don't foresee her. She's yeah, no, she likes the animals. Not to say I don't like, because I love deer and wildlife obviously, but she
Yeah.
has. I don't think she could do that.
You could always come back with the you know, shooting a bow doesn't make a loud sound. There's no boom with that.
Yeah, I don't think it's the noise.
Yeah. Definitely don't want to push it. And who knows, maybe years down the road she might be
Yeah.
ready to do that.
Yeah, and like I said, whether it's just even just scouting or looking for sheds or just walking, and any time spent outdoors doing stuff like that is well worth it. So
Yeah, definitely. Do you do any kind of small game hunting? You guys got like pesky little squirrels running around there? You like to get after those, or?
I would have loved to get. We had actually squirrels living in my attic this whole winter, so I would have loved to get at those, but I'm not sure how good those would have been for eating, considering they're eating all insulation and
Yeah.
nastiness. But I know there is some small game hunting. There's squirrel, raccoon. I think weird enough, I'm not sure if dog hunting is actually allowed for raccoons. That might not actually be allowed either.
Huh.
I have to look in the. I could be completely wrong about that. I could just be, speaking about stuff I don't know about. But there's that, and then a lot of guys actually, when it comes to like duck season, a lot of guys actually blind in a big old like 20-foot john boat, and we'll take it on some salt marshes, and even on the ocean we'll do sea duck hunting.
Huh. You ever get to do any of that?
Nope, not yet. Yeah, I don't even have a shotgun yet, so
Yeah.
I'm working my way up to that.
Yeah, sea duck hunting. I've never waterfowl hunted, so
Mhm.
I wouldn't know anything about it, but something about going sea duck hunting does sound fun.
It sounds a lot of fun. I'm down for it if I ever get invited, but I don't have any buddies that do it.
You might need some of that Nantucket money to get involved in that. I know a box of shotgun shells, like steel shot, for ducks is probably $25 a box. So the
Yeah.
decoys and all that stuff in the boat, probably just better off finding a buddy that does it to tag along with.
Yep, I'm all set with that. That's fine.
So do you have any good hunting stories? Anything weird ever happened to you? Something weird has had to have happened to you on public land, or you've seen some crazy stuff on public land, surely.
Yeah, so I have quite a few, but I say one of the craziest is actually, I know a lot of people have unique first deer stories. Well, mine was, I only got my first. When did I get my first? I don't even remember when I get my first deer, but my first buck rather, and that was on Nantucket when I got my first buck, and he's a big old. I like to say he's a 6-pointer. He has a weird little lobster claw, which I guess doesn't really count as a point, but I like to say he's a 6-pointer. But I was sitting in this one stand, and a button buck came in, which I shot, and I actually ended up spining it, so it died right in front of my stand. And so a few hours later, at around 10 o'clock, this buck comes out of some thick stuff right in front of me and sees the doe, and then turns the other way. And I was like, oh, I was so mad with myself. I thought it was going to go away. And it walks a real wide circle around me. It comes out, and I was able to get about a 35-yard shot off on this deer. And so it takes off running through some of that, just that unimaginably thick stuff I told you about, runs. I hear it crashing. I hear it stop. And then I hear it take off again. And so I texted the guy I was hunting with, all excited that I just shot a deer. And so we get down. And I'm like, oh yeah, I just shot a buck. I'm so excited. He's like, oh, which way did it run? And I pointed. He goes, oh, I just shot a buck from over there too. I went, yeah, well, what did it look like? He's like, I don't know, I couldn't see it. He goes, it was 60 yards away, so I took a little bit of a Hail Mary shot at 60 yards through a little pocket I had. I'm like, okay, sure. So we find my arrow. And so we start tracking blood as far as we can, and then we find his arrow as well. And he was using, I think at the time it was a Rage Hypodermic just came out, so he was using one of those. And the blades were all deployed, but there was no blood or anything on it. Hair on it, but there was no blood on any of the arrow. And so we're thinking maybe he hit it high or low or something like that. And we walk about 15 more yards, and there's the bottom half of a deer's leg sitting there. And so he had ended up taking a Hail Mary shot at 60 yards, and with that arrow, he aimed just a little bit too low, ended up taking it down right below the knee, took the deer's leg off.
My gosh.
And so that deer, once we got it, was dubbed the Cinderella buck, because we were trying to find the deer that, matched the slipper, so to speak. So we ended up finding it, and I ended up actually, I was all nervous, so I ended up putting a liver shot on it, so he had to go. I ran out of arrows, so he had to put one more in it for me, but that was the most interesting one I've heard of so far.
So let me get this straight. You shot the deer, and then he shot the deer's leg off, or they were two separate deer?
No, it was the same deer. I shot the deer. It was a liver shot, so it took off. Then it stopped where it thought it was safe on this old cart path that he could see from his stand. We were in Nantucket. I think our stands were maybe 25, 30 yards apart, and you can see completely separate deer. That's how thick it is.
Yeah.
So he just saw a buck way down 60 yards away, took a shot, and thought he hit it, but aimed a little too low, right below. If he had aimed, a little bit higher, it would have been right in the vitals. But he had just been a little too low, and he had taken the deer's leg off.
That's impressive for
Yeah, no, he was no
for a
joke.
broadhead.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely different.
Wow. That's the wildest broadhead story that I've heard yet. I mean, that's
Mhm.
wow. So you ended up getting the buck. So who
Yep.
put the tag on it then?
That was me. I think it was because it was, I was the one who shot. It was my first one. I'm pretty sure he just was like, oh yeah, no, I have better ones on my wall. You just take it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I was very, very fortunate and very happy about that. So I got the head, but he kept the leg, and he had a whole shed full of, horns and caps on his shed, and he put the leg right in the center of it. So we each got a trophy out of it.
Yeah, I guess you're the first one to shoot it, and it was going to die from a liver hit. So
Yeah, exactly.
if I was the judge in that competition, I'd say it's your buck.
Yeah, well, absolutely he got quite a few steaks and burger out of it for sure, because I was very thankful.
Yeah, that's a heck of a story, man.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun day.
So you told me a little bit when we talked before the show that you've been kind of doing some DIY projects. Been kind of playing around with some antler lamps or something like that, or knives.
Yeah, I did make it's actually in the room right now, but going back maybe 5 years ago now, I just had some sheds laying around, and so I was able to epoxy them in and put a lamp holder on top and make a lamp out of it, which I love. And then this was actually, because I'm kind of a knifeaholic, I just love any sort of knife, and so this was actually one of my first projects, which
Oh yeah, super cool.
Just super simple, buy the blade off Amazon and just drill it out. But this is because I remember seeing on growing up watching all those Alaska shows, and the guys always have the antler knives.
Yeah.
Man, I wanted one for years, so I decided to make one. And so you just it's too much of a glare, but you just grind the brow tine down, and that gives a nice little grip, and it fits great in there.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to get into, because once I start a project, I want to see it all the way through. So I got into very amateur, I know it kind of looks like garbage now, but leather working, so built a sheath out of it and stuff like that. So, and then
you carry that knife. You got deer with that knife, or is that just like keeping the desk and don't want to get it bloody knife?
No, I have knives for getting bloody, but that's one I definitely carry if I'm going like bear hunting or something like that, or even when I'm scouting, I usually have it. I like to just carry it on me just because you always need a knife, and I think it's just awesome. I just love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll just carry it on me, kind of just random times. Doesn't really have a certain time. Definitely not a gutting knife.
Yeah. That's super cool, man.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to do that as like a business little side hustle in the future, or are you just going to kind of keep that as a hobby?
I think just a hobby out of a lack of antlers and a lack of time. I think keeping it a hobby is probably the best thing to do.
Yeah. I could see it getting expensive if you had to go out and buy a bunch of sheds.
Yeah.
I've seen kind of what different pieces go for that are made out of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I could see the reason they're being so high is those people are having to buy those antlers from somebody that's tracked 5 miles to find a little forkhorn shed out in the middle of some public somewhere.
Well, even like you go to the pet store or something, and an antler chew, something that's going to be eaten by a dog is, $25 for a stinking piece of antler. So much less a tool that you can use for something is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, that's super cool. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time and coming on here and chatting about Massachusetts. I'd never didn't really know a whole lot about it. Didn't know about the island and all that stuff and all the deer out there. And sounds like maybe I need to drive my truck out on that ferry during the rut, go out there and shoot a bunch of deer.
No, definitely you should. That'd be a great trip.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear kind of like the topography and everything of other places, and it's funny to hear. It's probably funny to you that I don't know anything about like cranberry bogs, and it's funny to me that you don't know anything about like cornfields and bean fields. And it's like, you're far away, but you're not really that far away. So it's cool to hear about how other people hunt deer and kind of their strategies that go behind it. So can you kind of tell everybody, I know you said you don't have very much social media, but you got one platform you're on, so I'll let you tell everybody kind of where to find you if they want to connect.
Yeah, I've actually the only thing I have right now is a Go Wild account, and that's actually how I got in touch with you about even this podcast. Is you put something out there. So, but yep, Go Wild, just at Evan Landry, just my name.
Yeah. Okay. Well, man, I appreciate it again, and you got my number. You can reach out anytime, and we can connect on Go Wild or whatever. If you ever need anything, give me a shout.
Yeah, sounds great. Same to you. Thank you very much for letting me come on.
Yeah, cool, man. I'll catch up with you.
Yeah, sounds great. Awesome.
All right, cool. We'll see ya.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hunt the Wild podcast. If you enjoyed the show and it's brought you some sort of value, I'd love if you could give me a rating and a review. Just a few seconds of your time can help me better understand the type of content you all enjoy, and it would mean the world to me to hear from all of you.